All right, folks, I apologize for the wait, but welcome to the Dangerous Liberty podcast, where we know that safety at the expense of liberty is slavery. We got a good show for you tonight. I appreciate you jumping in on here. And yeah, happy Wednesday, everyone. I want to welcome everybody. And we got Brian Durbin, Office of the Peace Information. Let's see, Harmony Berry, Jason T.G. Sponsler, a bunch of other folks. Hey, I appreciate you coming in tonight. Yeah, we got a lot going on, and we're going to be talking about some plans that I have going forward as far as what we're going to do regarding Butler. I appreciate everybody's motivation on this issue. Hopefully you all can have watched the video I just released a little while ago. I've been getting hit left and right about all this supposed accounts that, crooks supposedly had. And man, we are getting a lot of bad information out there that's turning into this like internet telephone game, and it's going from one thing to the next to the next. And I'm afraid that a lot of that's intentional. I think that whether it is, our adversaries overseas, or if we're actually talking about just political actors out there trying to undermine this effort, I think that to me is the most likely culprit. So, you guys need to be vigilant out there. Make sure that you guys are paying attention. Look at all the information that you're reading. Yeah. And again, I think most of the people that are on this feed right now, you guys are much more informed than a lot of people out there. Like always, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of answer some questions for you all. Again, we do appreciate the super chats. We'll definitely prioritize those, and we'll kind of get into this. So without going too deep, first of all, I'm out of town still. And next week we'll be back in the studio, and this will typically runs a little smoother. We got some nice bumper music, intro music, all that other stuff. I want to say hi to Uzi, Michelle Olive, Danny Bruin fan, Someday, Tactical Nomad. Hey, we appreciate you guys coming in. So I'm going to let everybody just take a few minutes for a few more people to come in. We got Wonder Lustful. All right. Hello. We got Renee Bella. What's going on, Renee? How are you? Frederick the King. Bunch of other folks. And if I'm missing you, I apologize. If you haven't said hello, make sure you say hello. I have some evidence. From an OnlyFans model named Avocado Throtty. Okay, sweet. Yeah, so one of the things that I've done is I've set up a new email address. I'm just going to type it down here so everybody can see it. But it is dlpodcast at ParamountTactical.com. And for all inquiries, if you want to send us information, you want to send us leads, all those things. So that's where it's going to go. I knew that was coming. I appreciate that. I'm glad that didn't slip by you. DL Podcast at ParamountTactical.com. So again, if you have any inquiries, if you have any questions, if you have any additional information, new footage, one thing I think will be interesting. Somebody sent me a video just the other day, and it was a guy taking video from the side, basically the side of the AGR building. So we're basically talking about the west side of that building. And from where they were near a tree, and you could see a straight line distance. All these people could see Crooks in his position. I've yet to see good video from that. Now, he was actually standing by a whole bunch of other people, probably 10, 15 other people that were taking video from that side, but that had a clear line of sight to Crooks. I think if we can get some good video from any of those folks, that's going to answer a lot of questions. And it may put to bed some of these other theories and things like that. Let's see. Hello from Jersey Girl living in Virginia. What's up, Jersey Girl? We got a lot. It's a lot easier when I got somebody running these questions and things like that. Paramount Tactical, Gary, as you are a guy who works with Fed agents, how well do you trust the majority of them? First of all, I don't work with Fed agents. I used to. All right. So for the last 2 years, we've been basically doing Paramount full time. Before that, I did work for a federal agency. I worked as a contractor. And generally speaking, I think most of the time, the guys and gals on the ground are normal people, right? I will say once you get up into those management leadership positions, that's when things get extremely political. And it corrupts good men and women. I've seen people go from, again, just normal people. They're embedded into the system. They're invested because they have a career, pensions, all these things. And it changes them drastically for whatever reason. And I think most of it is because of good intentions. But then they start really being more concerned about the reputation of the agency as opposed to doing what's right. I've seen that time and time again. And I've also seen time and time again where, bad things happen. And, most of the time I'll say things that I actually personally experienced were fairly benign. But little things get covered up. Little things get brushed under the rug. So if and when there's big things, those are definitely going to get brushed under the rug. And we can get into all that. One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I mentioned in that video earlier, when you're looking at a situation like this and you're trying to find answers, I think it's a really bad idea to start with a theory or to be sold immediately on a theory and then continue to look for the evidence of said theory. I just leave it at that. Like, look at the evidence. Look at the evidence, see what's going on. And whatever the evidence that you're looking at tells you is what the truth is, then go with that. I mean, I don't know what to say, but what I do see I see a lot of things going on with this. And that is, number one, a lot of people have partial information. They watched part of a video. They saw one podcast or they saw one video or all these things. And then, that's how they see the world for everything else. And they get so much other things wrong, and they're just operating on an incomplete data set and coming to really bad conclusions. And then they feel very, very emotionally attached to those conclusions or to what they believe on that. And like, these ideas, don't be married to them. It really comes down to that. And there's just so much bad information out there. Oh, I did want to say, somebody reminded me, hey, folks over there on Rumble. Again, normally when we are in the studio, I have somebody back there monitoring and making sure that everybody in Rumble is included. It's a little tougher when I'm doing it here. The StreamYard software that we use to stream all this stuff is not compatible with Rumble. It will stream through there, but I see all the questions and all the comments and things like that over here in the corner from from Facebook and YouTube. It doesn't work with Rumble. So that's why I always call you my lost boys and gals over on Rumble. And I will try to jump over there from time to time and see what's up. Did you see the Stephen Gardner podcast with the Pulitzer guy talking about seeing crooks and sizer teeth sticking out forward? Oh, this is great. So first of all, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some terminal ballistics and how that stuff works. And I'll probably end up making a video on this. I don't know how much content there is, but hold that question for me, and let's hit that in a little bit. Gary, thank you for your level head and helping us think this through. You're welcome. psychology and behavior science definitely play a big role here. So number one, all of us, human beings, we are very vulnerable to confirmation bias, right? We sometimes even unconsciously kind of get attached to an idea or a theory or whatever else. And then we are constantly looking to validate and confirm that idea. And I think there's a lot of information out there that we're being played on. And folks, I think the left, we can talk about government this or government that, and maybe there's no distinguishing between the left and the U.S. government right now. I think there's some truth to that, but I think they're intentionally putting out a lot of bad information. When it comes to, I haven't looked into I know the shortages for the stocks on True Social. That is on my to-do list. I'll be looking at that. But when it came to these, $1.5 million in investment accounts or, overseas accounts, I felt immediately that was nonsense. And then I also thought, well, if the FBI isn't sharing that information, how did that get out? Who had that information and why did that get leaked? It seemed awfully suspect to begin with. If the FBI did have that information, I don't think they would share that. The information the FBI did share was that, from the beginning, what we've been hearing is that there were some comms apps that he was using that were encrypted. We don't know who he was talking to. That's another question that we need to get to the bottom of. And so far, we haven't gotten a good answer on that. And hopefully we will. But that somehow got turned into offshore, $1.5 million in money somewhere. And then it was very specific. There was like, $800,000 in Switzerland, $800,000, $300,000 in this account in this country. Like you're never going to get, when you start seeing that level of specificity, you need to get super suspicious right away. Well, let's do this. Hopefully we got most people on here. We got 300 or so on here right now. Let's talk about what I plan to do here, because I know a lot of people have been talking about, what is something we can do? And I already told you that I plan on going out to Butler. I've already been talking to people to assemble a team to go out there. So I decided that we're going to start something called Project 713. And this is not just going to be for this incident. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble a solid team. We're going to end up making this a 501c3, a nonprofit. And not only are we going to investigate this, but I want this to be a standing working group to where we can actually go behind and proof the work of the FBI and other investigations. Looking back at all these different things that have happened that have continued to erode the trust of the American people. We can go all the way back to 9/11 if we want. But, some of the ones off the top of my head, Las Vegas shooting, Uvalde, almost every mass shooting. I think there is always an information campaign that the federal government uses when we have a mass shooting. And it is a very anti-gun campaign. And, I don't know if you all are new to this channel, but I'm as 2A as they get. I think that the Second Amendment is what keeps us free. It is what keeps the government in check. It is what is the main deterrent from the government running amok. We know that, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the more power the federal government has gotten, the more of our rights have been violated. And it's just an erosion of our rights. It comes down to that. See, Jeff here says, Western Ohio, Bigfoot research people bring all kinds of binos and binos to see better. Yeah. So with that said, going back to Project 13, folks, if, there's all these people out there that want an answer and they're looking to government for an answer. And I think anytime that you're looking for government to investigate the government, you're going to come up pretty disappointed every single time. So again, what we're going to be doing is assembling a whole bunch of folks. I've already talked to surveyors. We're looking at geospatial engineers so we can look at some 3D modeling. We're going to end up needing to work with some attorneys for FOIA requests, some other people with any sort of investigative backgrounds. These are people that we're going to vet very well. We're going to get to know them, see what their motives are, and hopefully it is to save our country and to hold government accountable. Again, what we're looking for is truth and accountability. So Project 713, for those of you that are interested, and this is something that you actually believe in, and you actually want to hold the government accountable and do something more than, just talk on YouTube or down in the comments of Facebook, or, give your opinion on what theories are available and all the outrage that we can muster here on the internet. Or what you can do is you can go to our Patreon account. The links are down below in the description. And I have tiers set up just for Project 713. We've always had a Patreon account. We really do appreciate the support that we get through our Patreon members. But if you want to support this effort, it's something that's going to take money. It's going to take money and resources to go out there and do these things. And hopefully we get to a point to where this is something that anytime an incident's taking place, the FBI is going to know that Project 713 is going to muster all the resources we can to hold them accountable and to make sure that they're telling the American people the truth. And then what we're going to do is also keep a running tally on our website, where we're going to show you proof of things that the government is lying about. And then, because I think that's the best way to do this. They get away with lying to us because there's no one that is going to hold them accountable. There's no one going back behind them and investigating these things. And I just think we're getting played by the government, and they are able to create the optics that they want. They are able to create the narrative that they want. And if we want them to be accountable, we need a we the people solution. And this is what I've come up with. So this isn't just for this incident. There's going to be more. And that's what I want to make sure that we can do. Let's see. We got a super chat. Liz, thank you. I thought she had a question. She didn't. She just gave us a super chat. So thank you very much, Liz. We appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, the other part of that is kind of a recruiting phase, right? We're going to need people with administration capabilities. We're going to start creating an archive, start putting all the information from photos to different graphics and things like that we've all seen. I have probably a terabyte worth of video, graphics, pictures, and they're kind of spread out in some different folders. We need to get somebody that can make sure that we're archiving that and organizing that for easy access. The other thing that I want to do is, again, we're going to need somebody that's just going through emails. Folks, I had to create a separate email for this project just because our business emails are just being overran with this. And then ultimately, we're going to have somebody that go through those, answer those, vet those, screen them, make sure that they're legitimate, and then start collecting information as more information comes in. Because there's a lot of cell phone footage out there. There's a lot more information out there that we've yet to see. I don't know if the FBI was able to get those cell phones, or if those are people that were never asked to provide information or provide their phones or whatever else. But the folks, there's a lot more cell phone footage out there that's going to answer a lot of these questions. Val says, do you have a group of people lined up? I do not. I have a few people lined up. I have a former investigator that worked at a couple of different agencies. He also worked directly for the Secret Service back in the day. He's very disappointed in what's going on. This is somebody, I've told you I have two friends that worked for the Secret Service. One was an instructor. One was a former counter sniper team member. That's not who I'm talking about. This is somebody else I was introduced to through a third party. And we're in the vetting process of that. We had a couple surveyors reach out to us from the Butler area. I definitely want to get out there. We're going to start getting some measurements. One of the problems that we have right now is we have a certain amount of data, and people are just going through and regurgitating through that data. There's a little bit of new information coming out here and there, but not enough to really change people's minds or to really illuminate some of the areas that are gray to us. So we need new information, and we need to get inside that. We need to get inside that facility. We need to look at some of the other. There's just a lot of stuff out there that we need to look at. And again, I think one of the big things that I think it's important what I've been doing, as far as, I don't mean to say what I've been doing is important. That's not my point. What I'm trying to say is, it's important that we do show what is not plausible. And what I mean by that is going through some of these theories that just don't make sense. And you got to get rid of the implausible, and so we can narrow things down. And we'll talk more about that. Let's go ahead and talk about what I've been hearing all over the internet too, as far as the shooter's teeth were blown outward. Folks, when someone is shot in the head, all right, so we have our cranial cavity up there. Your brain is like 85% water. I had actually had a graph of, the average male, his body's like 65% water. The brain is actually around 85% water. The reason that rifle rounds are more lethal than pistol rounds, it's like 70% of everyone that's shot with a pistol lives, 30% die. And that is completely inverted with a rifle because of muzzle velocity. And also because of what's known as the hydrostatic shock wave, right? So basically what happens is, what causes the most amount of damage is the velocity. So we have this bullet moving through your body, the projectile moving through your body, and it's displacing all this tissue, fluids, and everything so fast that it creates a hydrostatic shock wave. And water is incompressible, right? It doesn't compress. You can't compress water. So once it starts moving, it's pushing out, and that's actually what ends up killing you and does the most amount of damage. Not necessarily the wound channel. We have the temporary cavity, which, as that bullet goes through there, that's what happens. We have this hydrostatic shock wave that goes through the body, goes through tissue materials. All right. And then it collapses in on itself really fast. And as a matter of fact, if you ever see that on a ballistic gel dummy, it will collapse in on itself so fast that it compresses air and actually causes a secondary explosion that you can see through the clear gel. So there's a lot of damage that takes place there. Now, if a projectile goes through your dome up here, all right, so it's going in there, and all shock waves are going to take the path of least resistance. So as it goes through your brain, all right, it is shooting out this shock wave omnidirectionally in all directions, and it's going to take the path of least resistance. So what's going to do is going to end up blowing out your upper palate, and then it's going to come out through the mouth. So the fact that if we have a bullet wound going through the head and blowing teeth out, that's exactly what you'd expect to see. So there's nothing weird about that. Another thing that people have sent me, Brandon Herrera does some really cool stuff. Is extremely entertaining. I know he's done some ballistic modeling with 300 Win Mag. Folks, ballistic gel is not a good analog for the human body. Ballistic gel, the only thing that does is it mimics the density of human flesh, and it is good for testing penetration. The actual characteristics of what goes on it just doesn't replicate it. It doesn't take into account all the different, number one, your skin, connective tissues, all of these things. So even if you have one of these ballistic gel dummies that has, bones inside, you're going to have an extremely over-exaggerated display, results, because that gel does not work like the human body. It doesn't have the elasticity. It doesn't have the tensile strength. It doesn't have, so it just blows up, and it's going to look very dramatic, but that is in no way a good indication of what actually happens to the human body. So when you see those things, take them for what they're worth. They're cool, good entertainment value. I'm not saying that you don't get any information out of it, but it's not, what happens to that gel dummy is not going to happen to a real person. Blood. So I saw some things in the chats on blood today. Somebody was saying to the effect, very definitively, look, when you get shot in the head, your heart stops pumping and you're not going to bleed out. Folks, you do bleed even when your heart stops pumping. So you know, what we have this cardiovascular system, and it is a pressurized closed system. And even if your heart's not pumping, number one, anytime that we have gravity involved, it's going to continue to, you know, drain out without a doubt. But even if you have a situation where you're working against gravity, let's say, you know, in this instance, we're laying on a inclined roof, head up. Number one, that system is pressurized. Number two, when you get that hydrostatic shock wave, it's going to send pressure through the system and kind of push, you know, you have veins and you have arteries, right? So it's going to pressurize that, and you're still going to have, even if his heart stopped immediately, and hearts don't always stop immediately, it can. But even if it doesn't stop immediately, even the pressure from the body is squeezing that blood out through the vessels and things like that. So, you know, nothing surprised me of the few pictures we've all seen where, you know, we have a blood trail trailing down the roof, all those things. Nothing surprised me there. Like, I mean, that's kind of, you know, again, I talked about this last week when we were talking about bullet wounds and terminal ballistics. You have typical results and then atypical results, and that's a spectrum. You know, you can have something that a high caliber round that can hit a person and it just not do the damage that you thought it was going to do for whatever reason. And it all depends. I don't know what projectiles the Secret Services are using. A lot of those things come into play. They keep on insisting that no one was on the second floor during the shootings, that they left it abandoned because they know that's where the real assassin was inevitably. So, you know, I mean, when we say that, if we think that's where the real assassin was, what we're saying is that the Secret Service was involved and all of the local LE officers were involved too, and they were complicit in the planning and the execution of the attempted assassination of our former president. Man, that's a lot riding on it to fail. I mean, I just keep going back to that, you know. Didn't work, right? And, you know, we haven't got a good explanation. I mean, I know what the explanation was. Benny Johnson and the two congressmen, if you guys haven't seen that video, they went on top of the roof. They did some initial, I mean, they just gave their opinions on what took place. They did talk a little bit about the official story was essentially that one of the Butler SWAT guys, the ECU guys, they were up there in, I guess, an overwatch position. One guy left for whatever reason, and then his card wasn't working to get back in the building, so he had to call his buddy. He went down there to open the door, and, you know, that was when the shooting took place. So there was nobody manning that position while the shooting took place. Does it seem unlikely? Yeah, it does. I get it. I mean, it does, you know, but, you know, weird things happen. And, you know, it's like when you have a tornado and the entire neighborhood is wiped out, but there's like one house standing. You know, maybe there is more nefarious things afoot. Maybe they are an accomplices to all these things. I don't know. You just got to figure out what the most plausible thing is. Michael Burke, mostly, but you have to pressure. You have pressure in the system like a balloon laying on the concrete. That's exactly right. You're going to lose a lot of pressure through the initial wound. There's no doubt about it. But you still have pressure going out. You're still going to be oozing blood out. You're going to have an initial spray where that system is overpressurized. We're going to have a lot of pressure built up into that, and then again, just laying on just the weight of your own body is going to continue to squeeze and compress those blood vessels and veins, and it's going to push that blood out. All right, this is what I like to hear here. All right, this is what this channel is all about. Paramount Tactical, I've never been a gun guy, but your passion for 2A has inspired me to start taking firearms lessons. Thank you for all you've done and have been doing for this country. Well, thank you. And that's the biggest thanks I can get, man. Everybody needs to get out there. You need to get armed. You need to become self-sufficient, self-reliant. Don't trust the government. Don't take help from the government. I think there was somebody that once said the scariest words you'll ever hear are, you know, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We got another was Harmony Berry. We got 11.99 pounds. I like to see, or euros. I'd like to see those. Oh, that's cool. Cool that there's people across the pond watching us. Yeah, so I actually have a friend at the Heritage Foundation. Look, I'm actually live in the DC area, sort of. I'm actually Martinsburg, West Virginia, about an hour and a half from Washington, DC. Most of the people that I know, I've worked for the government in a couple different capacities, mostly for the Department of State, mostly for diplomatic security. So I know a lot of people in the Beltway through different contacts, through friends. I got a lot of friends that have gone from that job to other jobs, working for government folks, government agencies, and different organizations. I also have some friends that work for the Heritage Foundation, some other nonprofits, conservative nonprofits. So they're the ones it's been reported that has this information, that there was a cell phone that's pinging at Crook's house, and then at another location near a FBI field office. I wanted to talk to the Heritage Foundation, and I have a friend of mine that's trying to work on that information. So we'll see if we can get that. People are stuck on the second shooter, but I have watched everything I can get and no evidence of a second shooter. I mean, honestly, this is kind of where I'm at. And I've said this plenty now. Here's part of the problem too with the second shooter theory. Like, I understand, like, so for instance, JFK, why did we think there was a second shooter? There was some initial reports on the ground, which I think we all can agree that, even eyewitnesses and things like that, things get a little hectic on the ground, especially if you're, if you've never seen anything like that. One of the videos that I was watching last night that was taken from the west side, I couldn't even hear what's going on because there's a lady in the background just shrieking the whole time. And she's just screaming the whole time, completely hysterical. And, in my mind, I'm like, what are you doing? But the point is that people react differently to stressful situations. They perceive things differently when they're under stress. They get very tunnel vision. They have audio exclusion. So their hearing kind of essentially has the equivalent of audio tunnel vision. They exclude a lot of information out there. We're in, self-protection mode. And so we're not the best observers when we're under stress. Going back to the JFK situation, the reason that people started thinking that there was a second shooter was because we had entry and exit wounds that needed an explanation other than Lee Harvey Oswald. Like, I don't understand the explanation or why the need for a second shooter. Like, we have two eyewitnesses, and I just told you that, yeah, they can get confused, and I'm willing to say that maybe they were confused. But we had two eyewitnesses, and man, the video from Dave and two of the eyewitnesses that we had on, I don't think their two actually caught it while it was shooting, but their video, Dave's video, being very close right there, it sounds very clear to me. I can't, in that audio, doesn't sound like there's a change in position from where that sound is coming from. It doesn't sound to me like a change in tone, because we're right there at the muzzle. And those two guys basically said, hey, look, all of those rounds came from that position. So, ultimately, I think what happened with this second shooter theory and why people won't let it go is we did have audio analysis come out within a couple of days of the initial event that would seem to indicate that there were more than one shooter, both from a tone perspective, and then people started doing a deep dive into both the actual shockwave of the bullet and then the actual sound of the report, and doing some analysis with that. The main problem that I have with this, and I've talked to multiple audio engineers, and honestly, their conclusions are a little bit, they're not the exact same, not even close, as a matter of fact. But one of the issues I had with that data within the first week of getting into this is I watched literally 10 to 12 YouTube channels that were, high quality YouTube channel. I think these guys were being honest and earnest and sincere. And some of them were kind of doing their own analysis. Others were leaning on audio engineering companies and things like that. But they all came to vastly different conclusions. And everything from the distance of where the shot came from or the different shots came from to all this other stuff. So I don't know. I'm not an audio engineer. I do film video. I film a lot of shooting. I've been doing that for a long time. We make a lot of videos on shooting guns and doing gun reviews and, training and everything else. And I can tell you, like, it's pretty easy, for instance, and this is what came to my mind and why I immediately started thinking about, hey, what if we had the muzzle in front on the roof, which we have a resonator that's pointing out, and then we pull the muzzle back slightly. You're only moving that gun 6 inches. And now you have the muzzle on the back side of that roof. We have a resonator that's pushing that sound rearward, and how much that changes. And the reason I thought about that immediately is because we do a lot of training people where they're shooting from behind cover. And we show them and we film them very often where they're shooting back. It's the correct way, by the way, where you get away from cover. So now we have an audio or a video source, recording source in front of that. But now their muzzle is on the back side of that cover and they're shooting at a target around that cover. But again, their muzzle's not exceeding the limit of that cover. And then you do the exact same gun, same person, same ammo, same everything, and you push that muzzle slightly forward, and you are getting a completely different sound. It sounds different. It looks like it sounds like it's coming from a different location. It completely changes the dynamics of the perception of that audio, and I would assume the actual audio waves of that audio. But it does seem different. And I think ultimately we are... I think that's the only thing, and I think that solidified in so many people's minds, hey, there's definitely a second shooter, that now we have a problem in search for evidence. And, I see it all the time. I have the same people, where they're like, Gary, it was in that bottom floor. And we talk about why that's not possible. Well, Gary, have you looked 500 yards backwards? Well, I'm looking at where you're talking about. Doesn't look like there's a line of sight to trump the way that the trees are angled and the way that that line of sight would put us there. But on top of that, the other problem with that, the second shooter thing, is like we act like there wasn't that many people there. There was hundreds of people there. I think there was reported like almost 20,000 people there in obviously the main area, but there was lots of people kind of scattered about through that entire complex over there. And I'm telling you right now, you don't have to be on the gun range really long. If you have somebody shooting over here at this position and another person shooting over here at this position, it sounds completely different. It's very, very different. Now, I will say there is a little bit of, it can be a little confusing when you're in a mountain environment, like a bunch of buildings, right? An urban terrain, as we would call that, where you have the echoes bouncing off of a lot of different areas. But never once would you confuse that, that's a different gun. Like if you're near that, if you're within 100 yards of that, you're not going to confuse one gun and like somebody shooting over there and somebody shooting over there. It's just, you're not going to do that. Now, again, the audio might sound different. Some perception might change, but there's all kinds of people out there. Like they're going to tell, like anybody standing in front of that building, if there was somebody shooting on the roof and somebody shooting from that bottom window, you would be able to hear and tell. I got the black lung. You'd be able to hear and tell. You'd be able to tell that right away. How did Trump's ear heal so fast, given hydroshock and ballistic dynamics? Well, you can still get grazing wounds. Look, I think there's been some political play on both sides of this. My suspicion, we haven't seen it, that he basically had a grazing wound. Ears bleed a lot. I'll tell you that. That's why wrestlers and people that fight get cauliflower ears. They break blood vessels in the ear. So it probably wasn't a super significant wound, and it probably healed pretty quick. I don't know. He also has access to a lot of shit, right? Like stem cells, plastic surgeons. I mean, he's probably putting stuff on his ear that you and I have never even heard of. So, I don't have a good answer for you on that one. Super chat from EQ Maverick Poet. Nick Irving on the PBD podcast said he heard 2 distinct weapon sounds. So don't know. All I do know is that the USSS top admin is full of idiots. Yeah. So I think both things can be true and both things could be, well, look, I think Secret Service has some real problems. I think like the rest of the different agencies in the DOJ in general have been, in Homeland Security, have been completely overran by political activists, not leaders. So there's that. As far as 2 distinct weapon sounds, look, there are definitely some audio, and that's the problem. It depends upon what audio you listen to. Like I've listened to multiple audio where I'm like, sounds like the same weapon to me. It's just one's going slow, one's going fast. Just because it sounds like a different weapon, it doesn't mean jack. And on top of that, how those audio devices record sound, change that sound, they compress the sound. Here's a great example of this. So July 13th, the day that happened, I'm driving home, or we just finished up from a tactical carbine course. Maybe it was a handgun course. I don't remember. One of the two. So I'm finishing up. We literally just get cleaned up. And I'm getting in my truck, headed home. And on the radio, I think it actually came across an alert on my watch or something like that. So it was about 7 o'clock when I got home. And, a friend of mine jumped on. I was like, dude, you should do a live stream on this. I said, sure, why not? You're right. We should jump on there. It was the last thing I felt like doing. We should do it. So we jumped on. We did a live stream on there. And I'm listening at the time, the only audio we had, which was, they were just playing that same incident of Trump up front over and over. We didn't have all this extraneous audio and video at the time, but they were playing it from, it was either Fox News, one of the news organization mics that was, Trump was talking into. And I remember hearing the shots, and I was like, that's not even a center fire round. That's like rim fire or something. It didn't sound like center fire. It didn't have the percussion that center fire normally had. And, I was thinking about that the next day, and I was like, you know what? It probably was. And we still didn't know what rifle at the time. We didn't know what caliber, and we still don't really know what caliber. We know that it was an AR-15. I think it's safe to assume at this point that it was 223 or 5.56, but we didn't know. We didn't even know any of that, and we didn't know what gun it was or anything else. And I'm like, it might have been center fire, because I guarantee you, I do a lot of work with audio. I got a freaking audio mic here. I probably got $10,000 worth of microphones at the house. So I understand how these things work to some extent. But I guarantee you that mic that he's using talking there is a supercardioid mic, which means that it's rejecting all the sound around them. So, this mic needs to be able to do 2 things. It needs to be able to let Trump talk and us hear him clearly, while it completely compresses or rejects all that side audio coming from the crowd screaming and all the other stuff. So, we have some compression and things going on where it's suppressing some of those sounds. So, the next day I was immediately like, it probably was center fire. And what I was hearing was that mic doing what it's supposed to do, completely changing that audio, compressing that sound. So, the first day that it happened, I was like, yeah, sounds like a rimfire gun to me. It sounds like 22. And it did. Later on, I heard other audio. I'm like, no, that's clearly not rimfire. But it was like 2 or 3 days later at that point. So, the point is that these audio devices and the recording devices do a lot of different things. They do all kinds of things. They're manipulating the video. They're doing all kinds of things to manipulate the audio. So, I've heard a lot of different sources of audio and video, and some sound like the same gun to me, and some sound, I agree with what you guys are saying. Sounds like a different gun. Does it mean that it's a different gun? No. Other than the sound, like, there's nothing else. Like, I would understand if, like, again, there was 10 people hit and we only shot 5 rounds. Like, okay, let's look for another rifle. the problem, the other thing too with the second shooter theory is like right now, just a basic trajectory analysis, there's not a whole lot. If we just went with one shooter, the trajectories and everything line up. They do, without a doubt. If we start moving them, we start moving shooters around, or extra shooters. Those start to fall apart real quick, which means we have to find a place to put a shooter that is a very similar. It's going to be in a very similar trajectory, and maybe they did that. But again, if they were that sophisticated to do all those things, man, they shouldn't have been so sophisticated that they missed a very large man. Trump's not small. I mean, that's a layup. 140 yards, layup. 200 yards, Trump, a layup. And I would assume that we, think that, hey, the second shooter might be a little bit better equipped. But even honestly, even with a red dot, if the other shooter had a red dot, 200-yard shot at Trump, pretty easy to do with an AR. Pretty easy to do. But again, I know I'm trying to provide explanations for all these things, but I'm genuinely not rejecting that idea completely. I'm open to it. Like, show me some freaking evidence. That's all I need. I need some evidence. Yeah, they missed because he turned his head, but they also shot 2 more rounds in that slow aim fire process. So the average shooter, if they missed the first round, most people wouldn't be aiming for the head anyhow. I don't think he was aiming for his head. I think he was aiming high center massive, the chest. And if he didn't know his ballistic hold off, that round was going to be about 7 to 12 inches high, which would put it around the head level. So that's what I think about that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, that's my point is, he barely nicked his ear. And then we have 3 shots in about a second and a half. That's still fairly fast. 1, 2, 3. That's, a second and a half. Still fairly quick, but if this was a sophisticated operation, we would have seen a high level of success. And then I'm still a little bit and I'm a little bit unclear on this because I hear different things from everybody. If we have the 2-shooter person, if Crooks the first shooter or was he the second shooter? Most people say, hey, you know what? He was the patsy. He was the second shooter. He was told that basically you're going to hear 3 rounds from me. After that, light him up and distract him. Okay. All right. I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. Or, I've also heard that, Crooks took the 3 slow aim fire shots, missed, and then, we had the second shooter shoot the other 5. Why? I don't understand why. Why, if you have a second shooter and you're going to shoot fast, why would you give your position away? So out of those 2 theories, the second shooter shooting the first 3 makes more sense to me. But you still got to line up trajectories. You still got to provide some evidence, and I just don't know what that would be for. And again, I would ask you all, set your idea of what happened aside and just look at the evidence without additional speculation and all this other stuff. Look at the evidence, say this is what happened. It was on TV, it was videoed, and that's kind of a weird thing because I bet you if suddenly tomorrow we see a video and somebody is literally on top of Crooks and we see him shoot all 8 rounds and we see him shoot 3, come back, shoot 5, which would kind of give us an explanation for the sound difference, there would still be people say, he wasn't the only shooter. And at that point, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. When they first got up on the roof of Crooks, they first reported just 5 shell casings. Yeah, they did. I mean, they found 5 over here, 3 over there. Okay. I mean, that happens. Does it also leave room for the idea that they planted the other 3? Sure. But again, I mean, you got to get a lot of people in on this conspiracy, and I would buy it if the Secret Service controlled it all. The FBI and the Secret Service, you'd kind of have me on board. I don't think the good old boys from Butler, Pennsylvania, were part of this big conspiracy, and you'd have to have everybody bought and paid for and on board. Like, we all want to assassinate Trump, and that becomes an issue with me. Yurik was the shooter. All right, so I'm gonna do a video tomorrow on a pretty good analysis of facial characteristics, and you guys tell me what you think about that. Yeah, you know, I mean, even at the distance, I find it hard to believe. Well, Brad, 140 yards is like, folks, 140 yards is super close. 98% of you in this chat, 98% of you. If I had you on the range, I gave you one course on the fundamentals of marksmanship, and 90% of you with a red dot sight would hit 5 out of 5 on a full-size silhouette at 140 yards. Like this, like if you're a shooter, if you claim to be a shooter, and you can't put 5 rounds out of 5 pretty consistently, I'm not talking about, you know, just having a bad day where you miss 1 or 2, but pretty consistently, 5 rounds at 140 yards, you need to spend some more time at the range. And that's what I'm saying. I would kind of expect, like, if you painted me a scenario where you had a guy fresh out of high school, kind of nerdy, probably wasn't that proficient with firearms, and you told me he was going to shoot 8 rounds, I'd be like, yeah, okay, maybe, you know, especially up there under stress, hot roof, about to die, because I don't think he had an exit plan. And here's the thing, like, this guy is a classic school shooter too, right? He's a classic. I mean, he did a mass shooting. That's what he did. Luckily, between the grace of God and his lack of skills, he didn't do any major damage. Oh, hold on. He killed Corey Competore. But what I'm saying is, compared to what he could have done, it could have been a lot worse. And it is literally a miracle that we have 3 stands full of people, all the people out there, and we had the amount of casualties that we had. It's by the grace of God. It could have been significantly worse. If he would have been aiming at the stands and just, you know, unloaded a 30-round mag, it would have been really, really bad. Luckily, that's not what happened, and it is, you know, it is an absolute tragedy that Corey Competore died, and the people out there that were injured. And of course, you know, and again, this is an absolute failure by the Secret Service. But this guy was essentially your almost your stereotypical school mass shooter, right? And it wasn't done at a school, it wasn't done in a movie theater, it was done at a Trump rally. And I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious. I think most people realize what's going on with that. Yeah, I do think that he thought he was going to die. I think, you know, most of these types go into it either knowing that or accepting that. You know, well, I'm looking at the evidence. If you make the same sound with one gun at the same time frame, I mean, I'm just telling you, I'll take you to the range and I'll show you that, like, a little change in direction can drastically change the way that a rifle sounds. It just does. Truth, the trajectories don't line up, bro. There's no way there's a second shooter. Yeah, I agree with that. There was not two shooters missing at the range. No crooks missed and then started shooting at the crowd. I think that's exactly what happened. In my mind, he was shooting Trump. He shot those 3 rounds. Those were his best opportunity for precision and you know, his best marksmanship capabilities, precision and accuracy. And then Trump and that target, his main objective went away. You know, they took him down to the ground, or he went down to the ground. And then in desperation, he fired 5 more shots. and luckily, after that he was taken out. And I do agree. One of the things Chris Martins had brought up, and I agree with wholeheartedly, is that I think we have a safe assumption. We still haven't got 100% confirmation that ninth shot, which was a suppressed shot, came from Butler County SWAT, and it missed. But I do think, and he was the first one that I heard say this. I do think that came from Butler County SWAT, and I do think that changed his, because that's when he went to go get up. And Kurt, my guest that I had on, that was an eyewitness, said after that shot he saw essentially Crooks do like a push-up going to get up off the ground, and when he stood up, that's when he got shot. That's when Secret Service took him out. 15.9 seconds from the first round. Okay, yeah. I mean, okay, that's a fact. That, I mean, there's a bunch of people in that commercial. I mean, not all. I mean, I don't know what to say with that. And again, I think there's a high probability that Crooks could have been essentially he could have been mentored, pushed, developed, whatever you want to call it, whether that was through government agencies or, we also now, kind of the first time in a long time, we have these weird government corporation conglomerations that we see with the government and news agencies. We see with a lot of different corporate entities. I mean, we've always seen that with the military industrial complex. We've always seen that with, all the big weapons contractors. But we see that more and more now than we've ever seen before. All these, whether it's BlackRock, whether it's these other major investment firms, we see this bleed over into a government and this collusion with government entities that we've never seen before. So I'm completely open to this. Like that absolutely could have been, he could have been developed and coerced to do this in one form or another. We saw the FBI doing that in Michigan. I'm completely open to that. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Second shooter did first 3, got his ear. Crooks did the next 5, just guessing. Sure. This was Jason Z saying second shooter did first 3, got his ear. Crooks did the next 5, just guessing. Sure. I mean, I presented all the information I can present to counter that. And some of it is obviously speculation. We weren't there. We don't have all the facts. And we're not going to get more facts, more forensic data that's going to point us one way or another until we get out there. And that's just what it's going to take. Yeah, I mean, I think that missing 10, 12 minutes bothers everybody in that video. Truth, I don't flinch either on any round fired, LOL. Yeah, I mean, Jeff is a long-range shooter. We've had lots of discussions on this. He shoots MOA. I don't hold that against him. But I do know he shoots a lot of long range. And people that shoot a lot, you get rid of that flinch sensation. I mean, it's just a natural, something that it's one of the hardest things you can get rid of. And especially under stress like that, I wouldn't be surprised that an amateur like him under stress probably doesn't have his fundamentals down, probably not that great, might have a crappy gun. That's another thing we haven't talked about. I mean, that, not all ARs are built equally, right? They are not all the same. He might have had a crappy AR, had crappy ammunition. His optic may have been off, may not be well zeroed. There's 1,000 things working against him too. Yeah, that's exactly right. The story was that one of the guys went to go, he got the call or a text about Crooks. One left, and then when he was coming to get back in, he had forgotten his card or his card wasn't working, something like that. That's what we got to talk to Butler PD and the sheriff's department out there. Like, we got to talk to those people. I know that they were just on, they did an interview, a mass interview. I'd like to get those guys either doing something the same with asking better questions, because that interview sucked. It was basically it just wasn't a good interview. No, I think no matter what, HyperX Gemini said no conspiracy, just lazy complacency. No, I think there is a conspiracy. I think no matter what, we have a conspiracy, and I think at a minimum, what we have is a conspiracy to withhold security assets from Donald Trump. I've laid out they could have had counter surveillance teams. They should have had counter surveillance teams out there. They could have had counter sniper response teams out there. They could have had additional agents out there that normally coordinate with local PD so that they always have constant comms. So if counter surveillance teams were out there, this wouldn't have happened. If counter sniper response teams were out there, it wouldn't have happened. If they would have had additional agents out there with local SWAT, ECU, and other folks that are out there, this likely wouldn't have happened. The fact of the matter is that the Secret Service was doing a half-assed job. They gave up operational control, and it was weak sauce. That's the truth. Now, did that happen because of bad decisions on the ground, or did that happen because they were denied the resources they requested? I don't know. Another thing I want to kind of put to bed, I keep hearing it has been confirmed that since Trump had left office, this was the only time that they've had counter sniper team coverage. And I know that makes some people more suspicious. But then I've seen people in the comments say, no, I was at a rally and I saw counter sniper team coverage. No, you didn't. You saw local SWAT snipers there doing essentially a counter sniper role. That happens a lot. If there are local SWAT teams there that have a sniper team program, typically they will, essentially do a counter sniper, provide counter sniper coverage. But those folks are not Secret Service. And there is a big difference. There's a big difference in training and capabilities of the counter sniper teams and law enforcement snipers or even military snipers. Those are vastly different roles and different jobs, different capabilities. JFK lunacy has been going on for over 60 years. Some will never be convinced by evidence. Yeah, I'm kind of in that. I'm kind of on board with the. I'm kind of in the same ballpark with Lee Harvey Oswald. I think at a minimum he was. I think our government was complicit in the assassination of JFK. I do, and part of that is like a little bit of gut feeling, I guess, and some of the evidence they provided. Here's the most convincing thing of that. The United States government will not release all the information on the JFK files. And here we are 60-something, 70 years later, almost 70 years later. The only reason that I can think of that the U.S. government wouldn't release those files is because it would implicate them in some way. Maybe it's drastically that, hey, they had them killed, or maybe it's just they're covering their failures. That's a real thing too. And I think that's some of the things that are being done that, people will point to and say, hey, this is super sketchy. This is suspicious. You better believe that at a minimum, even if they did nothing, there was no conspiracy to kill Trump, or there was no conspiracy to deny him resources intentionally. If everything was on the up and up, at a minimum, you got people behind the scenes playing cover their ass. That is guaranteed. So you can take that to the bank. Sure. I don't know. He wouldn't flinch much. Yeah. So, there was another thing that said, hey, look, they had video of Crooks shooting and he didn't move. Look, an AR-15, if you have any decent fundamentals, there's no recoil to it. There's very little recoil. I could sit there and shoot that gun, and most people can, not just me. a lot of people could shoot that gun where you're going to see very minimal to no movement. It's not that big a deal. Crooks turned to look at the officer that pulled himself up then why didn't it show him turning to look that way? And why hasn't we gotten an official statement from the officer? Crooks turned to look at the officer that pulled himself up. Then why didn't it show him turning to look that way? And why hasn't? I don't know if I completely understand. I know you're talking about the officer that pulled himself up onto the roof to look over the top, and then I don't know the rest of it. I don't understand the rest of the question. Val? Okay. All I know, again, if you guys think that there was 2 shooters, I'm glad you're here. You care, right? I'm glad we're having this discussion, because this is how discussions should be had here in America, because we're freaking Americans. We're all the same team. We got a lot of people against us. And how idiotic would it be that if we get into this like 2 tribe camp thing going on, because some of us that are Trump supporters believe there were 2 shooters, and some of us believe there were 1 shooter. So now I hate you 2 shooter people, and I hate you 1 shooter people. I mean, come on, it's idiotic. That's the thing, Gary. You would need 1 guy from Secret Service directing everything. In my opinion, you wouldn't need everyone involved. I mean, maybe. I mean, it depends on, like, there's so many aspects of this theory that people keep talking about. Are we talking about, like, you know, I mean, it just depends on what you're talking about. Like, I don't have a good explanation for that. I don't see how that could be, to be honest with you, when we talk about all the different things. But, you know, there's people that say, hey, you know, the counter sniper team didn't shoot on purpose. They saw him forever. They never saw, you know, they waited till after he was done shooting to shoot him. Both teams saw him. You know, is one person responsible for the failure of the local law enforcement not spotting him, keeping him in track, you know, accountable, having accountability of where he was once they determined he was suspicious? They're the ones that let him get on the roof, essentially. And again, ultimately, it's Secret Service's responsibility and fault. But I'm just saying, like, you have to have them on. Did they allow that to happen, or would they just get complacent? And I think a lot of these people have done these things hundreds of times, and you know, it works out that nothing happens. And I think, you know, after a couple thousand of these types of events, you see a lot of weird stuff. And if you haven't, I keep saying this, you really need to go watch my interview if you haven't, with my friend that was a counter sniper team member. You know, he talks about that. He's like, man, you see all kinds of weird stuff. People are getting up on roofs, trying to get pictures. The little kids are up there. People are climbing up in trees, doing this. Like, you are constantly scanning. And that's another thing too. It's like, you know, Crooks was bouncing around the roof. We saw him in that new footage where we see his head go across the top there, less than 3 seconds, about 3 seconds, something like that. You have thousands of people out there. And as a counter sniper team member, you're looking in binos, you're looking at the crowd, you're looking beyond, you're looking high, low, you're looking underneath trees, in windows over here. Like, it is not even a stretch to think that both those counter sniper guys at that position that had that sector were in binos looking at something else during that 3 second period. And I don't believe that he was visible once he was laying in the prone on the roof and he was in position. I don't believe that he was visible to them. And we know he specifically chose a spot that offered him concealment from the trees, from using the trees, from the counter sniper team that he was in their sector, right? So the northern team could not see him because of the trees. The southern team had an opposite sector, looking the opposite direction. They weren't even looking over there. So we had 2 guys where trees were obscuring their view that, you know, Crooks was in his sector. So I think, number one, you know, the kid wasn't dumb. I mean, he was a fairly intelligent kid. And what I will say is that, you know, the Secret Service, I know in our minds, my mind for sure, Like they're supposed to be able to protect whoever their protectee is from state-sponsored threats, like people that are legitimate, like a squad of Al-Qaeda coming through with AKs. And that is clearly, they're nowhere near that level of capability. So I think that's been made, if a 20-year-old kid with an AR can get to the former president, then it's almost for show. And I don't necessarily think that it was the guys on the ground's fault. I think there again, they have all these other assets and capabilities and training and personnel that are specifically trained in counter sniper response teams and counter surveillance teams, canines, all these things. They didn't use any of those for Trump. And I think somebody needs to explain why. You would only need a few key people bought and paid for. That's probably true. You probably would only need a few key people, but they would also include the local guys. Based on that video, we're talking about the video specifically where, they find 5 rounds and then 3 rounds, shell casings. Like there was a Fed up there, at least one Fed, but the rest of those guys were locals. So are all those guys in on it? I don't know. Seems unlikely to me. Question about the bullet and ballistic capacity. Is there a difference if bullets come from 2 sources, audio sound differently? Then if so, audio can sound, so like I've been saying since day one, audio can sound differently if we have 2 guns. That's true. But audio can sound the same if we have 2 guns. They can sound like the exact same gun. That's true. But then we can also have one gun that sounds different from one string of fire based on positioning, maybe even because we're shooting, the acoustics of their environment without changing position. I think it's very possible, and just looking at the waveforms on that, where you shoot 1, 2, 3, and then you shoot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you're stacking sound on top of one another. You're stacking sound waves on one another. The microphones have a hard time perceiving what's going on there, and so does even your own ears. So again, I do believe, I think with enough, the right situation, we could make 2 guns sound the exact same as far as tone wise. If you have them in different positions, you're gonna tell. Like people on the ground there, like that's the thing that I like boggles my mind. Like I'm telling you guys, if you're standing out there and there was one guy firing over there and one guy firing over there, 50 yards away, 20 yards away, 10 yards away, like you're gonna be able to tell the difference. So, I mean, it could be, absolutely, could be. You have no idea how much money that dude will cost. There are tons of money to be made. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure people would pay to have Trump killed. I don't doubt that at all. I'm more interested in why Greg left his post. It's a great question. Somebody answered it earlier. That is the official response to that. There was reports of crooks coming over the radio or cell phone text or however they were communicating. That's even not clear. And then one of the snipers that was up in that room left to go look for him and to scan their area. And then apparently couldn't get back in the building. So the other guy had abandoned his post, come let the other guy back in. That's the official story. Appreciate you're doing your best. The information you're relating is not accurate. 5-shot was him fire into the crowd to distract while real shooter. Okay. Well, first of all, you don't know that. So saying that my information isn't accurate, your information is pure speculation as well. I will admit that mine, well, no. I mean, at least I have some evidence. You have no evidence of a second shooter. So, I mean, I have 2 eyewitnesses saying that there was somebody on the rooftop and they saw at least muzzle flash or indication of the gun shooting in both strings of fire from that one position. So, I mean, I don't think you can say my information is not accurate. It's incomplete. My information is incomplete, but yours is more incomplete than mine. We'll leave it at that. I heard he was so bad he couldn't. Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me, though. I mean, maybe you're a bad shooter. Maybe he spent the next 3 years or whatever shooting every day at the range. Maybe he's freaking was a really good shot after that. Why is there no more body cam being released? Great question. We need to get FOIA requests into that. It's one of my big things that, like, we have to FOIA request the crap out of some things. And you know, I'm curious to see how this goes. I'd like to see Project 713 really take off to where, you know, we are doing work full time. And we have some really good people in place that are chasing down these things. I still want to go back and investigate Las Vegas. That's one thing that's always been on my conscience. I think there are lots of questions unanswered from Las Vegas, and I think there's answers that could be easily found. I just don't think there was something like what I'm describing as Project 13 there to chase those questions down. Because, well, basically what we're doing right here is what, you know, the press used to do. You know, they're out there finding this information, going to that place. They don't do that now. Nobody does that. If it doesn't help their political party, whatever side they're on, it's a waste of time. They got other things to do. And on top of that, we have so much stuff happening too. Like, our country's in chaos, the world's in chaos. We have an election season going on. It's a freaking circus. We have, you know, a Democrat Party nominee that didn't receive one single vote by anyone. So some pretty crazy times going on there. Five rounds under zero. I don't know what that means. It's 5 rounds in 0.81 seconds. I have a video where so his split times were about 0.19 to 0.2. I shot 5 rounds and actually put them all on steel, averaging split time of 0.13. So, like, that's another thing. The idea that that was going around by a lot of people saying that it's impossible for him to shoot that fast. I could have any one of you on an AR. One day at the range, you'd shoot 5 rounds. Like, if I don't have to aim, which he clearly didn't, most of you out there would be able to shoot 5 rounds in under 0.8 on just a stock trigger. And that's the other thing too. We don't know if I use the rifle I did in that video because I think it's the only rifle I have with a stock trigger. All my other triggers are Elfman match triggers, and they're much shorter on the reset, much lighter pull. I could probably average a 0.09 with 5 rounds if I wanted to with that trigger. But with a stock trigger, you know, 0.20, not hard, nothing crazy about it, nothing suspicious about it. Most of you would be able to do it. Why would a counter sniper be on the second floor window with a field of vision limited to Trump on stage? Well, he wasn't a counter sniper. And see, these are the little things that continue to haunt us. Little pieces of information that make people think things are weird. I don't necessarily agree with their position, but we have law enforcement snipers, and then we have Secret Service counter sniper teams. Very different roles, different jobs, different missions, different capabilities, different equipment, different rules of engagement, all those things. I don't even know why or who decided to put that sniper team in there. Doesn't actually make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's not a bad place to have someone in there, but like the sniper team, I think there would be other places that they could probably put them better. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. Point being is that those are snipers. They're not counter sniper. I mean, they're kind of filling the same role at that point. But, you know, there is a delineation. I think little things like in this stuff, when we get into the weeds of this, like, details matter. And a lot of people are just kind of glossing over the details. So it's causing more confusion for them and more confusion for other people because all that bad information gets spread. Different manufacturer making bullet that can be used in the long gun. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that absolutely can be a factor in this. I think your question is, I don't know if we're going back to sound. That's another thing that is absolutely potentially a factor is, you know, you can definitely, if they're drastically different in manufacturers and grain weight and muzzle velocities, you can hear a difference. And, you know, mixed ammunition could be a component of why those guns sounded different. But they're getting from some positions, from some audio that I've seen and heard. I agree with all of you. Like the 3 rounds sound different than the other 5. Other positions, they sound very similar. So, but mixed ammunition could be a major factor in that. Trump was already down after the first 3. I'm a 50-year-old girl who can hit that at 140. Yes, ma'am. 50 years young, kicking ass, taking names. I like it. No, it's not that far. What was Crooks? Let's see. What was Crooks doing in 10 seconds between the missed counter sniper shot and that shot that actually killed him? It's a good question. 10 seconds isn't that long, but and this is where Chris Martinson came up with, and I think it's right. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. Is he was getting ready to move, so you heard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That round probably went zipped right near his head or wherever, right? He knew at that point he was getting shot at. I actually think that was meant to be like a 10, 15, 20 round string of fire. But, again, they say everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Everybody's got a plan until, a round goes right over their head and then shit gets real. And it's like, oh, maybe I should move my position. Maybe I should improve my position here. And I think that's what he was going to do. He's going to move. And then he stood up. I don't know what he was thinking, but I do know the last thing that went through his head. So write that down. 130-yard cold bore shot is what deer hunters do. Yeah, like there's nothing crazy about it. Uric, I'm not sure about Uric. There was no 3 was no autopsy, no crime scene photos, no investigation on crime scene. All the screw up, something stinks. It smells like. No, I don't. Well, first of all, I think there is autopsy. I think there are lots of crime scene photos. I think there is a lot of things being investigated and a lot of forensic data that is being compiled and they're going over right now. They haven't released to us. I mean, look, I think the FBI, well, you guys know what I think of the FBI, but I mean, with that being said, 3 weeks into an investigation like this, we can't expect much. But, it'd be real cool if we had an organization like what I'm proposing putting together where something like that happens. And I know they're not going to give us access. Like they're not going to be like, oh, look, it's Project 713. You guys come on over here, grab some gloves and help us look at the scene. I realize that's not going to happen, but it'd be cool if we had something like that where they're on scene, taking video footage, we're letting the people that we pay their salaries know, man, we're watching you. And you better, if you're going to screw around, you better do it really well because we are on your heels. We're going to go through every piece of data that you put out. We're going to find the inconsistencies. We're going to prosecute you, right? In that we're going to prosecute the data that you're putting out to us. And then we're going to document every time that we know that you lied to us because we have a team of people that are highly sophisticated that can tell and have the time and the capabilities and the skill sets to go through this data and let the American people know that you're lying to us or confirming that you're telling us the truth because that's what we need. That's what accountability is. And we don't have it. We don't have anything like that in the United States. And there needs to be. Let me kind of scan down here. I'm way behind on the comments. You guys are way down here. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people had things to gain from Trump becoming president or preventing from becoming president or his death. I think the left hates him on a level that I think most of us can't really understand. I really do. I mean, you all have seen it. I mean, I think they really do think like Trump and Hitler are the same people. I mean, they hate him that much. They've told themselves, their leaders have told them, he is that big of a boogeyman. So I think there's plenty of motive. I don't think we're lacking motive. Lots of people and people like, let's say it is what it is on its face that Crooks, he was 20 years old. He was essentially 12 when Trump became president, if his parents were already liberal, he's been indoctrinated from the time he's 12 to now. Well, he's no longer with us, thank God. But he was indoctrinated for 8 years that Trump is the worst thing ever, and that the greatest thing that anybody could do would be to take him out. That's what he's been told for 8 years. That's the environment that he grew up in. And again, I don't know that his parents are, like hardcore liberal Democrats or anything like that. I think there's good. I think that's a good assumption. It's a fair assumption. Trump's own personal security detail, our former FBI. Look, guys, and that's the thing too. Like, at least there's a lot of people, I think, that are political actors and activists in the FBI and the DOJ and in the executive branch, period. But I mean, at least half, all right, maybe a little less in the FBI, but there's a good percentage that are just good Americans, good freedom-loving Americans that serve their country. I mean, most FBI agents, things like that, are veterans. Even people in the CIA and things like that, most of them are veterans, and most of them are good people, and they're trying to serve their country and do right by their country and their fellow Americans. And then there's some that are kind of on a different game plan. Let's see. So a couple things while I'll take some more questions. If you guys have more questions, throw them down there. We'll start wrapping this up. Number one, look, go down into the description below. Go check out the different tiers. $5 a month. I think I have it $5 a month, $10 a month, 20, 30, and 50 or something like that. If you all are serious about, we have 500 people on this live stream. I mean, this will probably at least get 5,000-10,000 views. If everybody gave $1, much less $5 a month or something like that, we can get this kicked off and we can do it right. Sure, I can always go out there, and I can go out there by myself and hopefully I already know I have a couple other people that will volunteer to go out there. But I mean, if we're serious about doing this and doing it right and really getting answers, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. Even for me, I'm going to go out there no matter what. But I mean, again, I'm taking from my business. That's opportunity loss. Folks, most of these videos get demonetized. Oh, that was another thing I'm going to talk about tonight. Folks, there's some crazy things. There's always been some crazy things with YouTube that's been going on. Most of our videos have always gotten demonetized because we're a 2A channel. So anytime there was a gun, and now there used to be some guidelines that you could do that if you followed those guidelines, even though you were doing firearm content, you would still get monetized. I would always follow those. We'd still get demonetized probably 70% of the time. Every now and then, for some reason, a video would get by the algorithm and or by a reviewer and get approved by a reviewer. Very rarely. I'd say 80% of our videos have always been demonetized. And we've always had weird things where people talk about, after a while, they were no longer subscribed to us. We've had a lot, and maybe it's just a percentage number. Like, we've obviously had more viewers and things than we've ever had before because of all this, and I appreciate it. But my comments are getting deleted. I respond to people. It's a normal response. Hey, thanks for watching, something like that. Those get deleted. We've had lots of folks talk about how their comments are getting deleted, how they're getting unsubscribed. They've had to go back and subscribing multiple times. People have always told me, hey, Gary, I've hit the notification button, but, I still never get a notification when you put out a new video. So a lot of weird things like that. So just be aware of that. So make sure you guys are paying attention. Make sure you're subscribed. And, we appreciate the little things like sharing our content. Little things like commenting, things like that always help us out. But hit that bell icon so that you know when we put out new content. And of course, every Wednesday we'll be here. But anyways, go down there, go in the description, go check that out. Also, if you would like to be a part of this, go to Dangerous DL podcast at ParamountTactical.com. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you want to do, what skills you have. I'm sure there's going to be some folks that we need just for helping out with some minor tasks. You may not be like a surveyor or some highly technical person. but I'm sure we can find some work for you. So if there's something you want to do, and ultimately I do want to get this privately funded so that we can pay people, so that they can go out there and do a great job, and we can get them paid. I think that's the fair thing to do. So if we have surveyors and other people like that coming out, at least a few $100s for the day, I think it's fair. And again, if everybody really cares about this, put your money where your mouth is. We're going to do everything we can to get this launched, get it going, and try to make this a real thing. So we appreciate that if you all do that. And that money will go to that. Like, that's not Gary going to put it in his pocket. I'm putting it toward those efforts. And that's why I delineated, and we know the difference between, what other people are putting in to support our Patreon on just the channel side and what people want to put money in. And we will be in the process of putting together a 501c3 so we can really separate all this stuff. And then I'm going to put together a board of directors for that 501c3. But I'm letting you guys know what my goal is for this right here, right now. This is where it starts, and we're going to make it happen. Shows authenticity. Not a good reader or counter. Shows authenticity to have comments read on the screen that people don't have to pay with super chat money, which YouTube gets a third and YouTube shadow bans the customer. Absolutely. I really appreciate super chats, and those are really great. There's definitely better. There's another thing that I will be doing. Jackson, bring me my phone for a minute. My son's over here using my phone. The other night I was talking about when I get questionable material that I don't want to just post on YouTube. And I said I would probably put it on Patreon, but I don't know what Patreon's rules on that are yet. I haven't really taken a look at that. One thing that I am going to bring back to life that we used to do a lot of is Telegram. So we do have a Telegram Paramount account. I'll give that information to you next week. It was one of those things that we were doing a lot of stuff on, talking to clients, customers, and subscribers and viewers, and then it just kind of faded and withered away. I'm going to get that back up and running. That is a perfect platform for doing this. And by the way, somebody in the comments suggested that. Brilliant. Thank you for reminding me. And we will get that up and running. And that way you guys can share stuff to us. And I do. I even when I see stuff that I think is questionable, like I don't believe in censorship of any type. And I talked about that in this video today. The last thing that we want is the government or anybody censoring information, because we as Americans need to be smart enough to delineate or to make our own decisions of what is real and what is not. The same thing goes with me, like with this. Like, I just told you, I've been honest with you guys, how I believe, what I believe, and why I believe it. But so if I get information, even if I think it's fake, I think the right thing to do is to share it, and then you guys decide. Like, yeah, and I'll tell you, hey guys, I would really bet this. This doesn't look legit to me, but so if I get pictures and stuff that are questionable, Telegram is the right platform for that. And I had my web guy had that set up, and we were using that all the time. Gary, can you comment on the Bianchi decision, 86 U.S. court opinion, banning AR-15? I tried to link court document with the comment. I'll look into that. 86. I haven't seen this. I'll tell you, usually that's been 100% my focus is what's going on in the courts with, firearms and or gun control legislation. This is taking me off that completely, and I've done nothing but this. Yeah, I need to. I'm tired of talking about Butler. I'll be honest with you, but I'm not going to stop. We'll keep going. All right. Larry Jones, correct. Jeff, thank you, buddy. We always appreciate you tuning in. Even if you do use MOA. Fico shooting was yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Oh, I did see a $2 super chat up here that I missed. Oh, that was just a $2 super chat. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Just for goodwill. Appreciate you, brother. There was a long one that I saw, and I'm gonna hit that one. And I think we're gonna call it a night. I'm tired. I haven't been sleeping much. Been doing a lot of this, and on top of that, you know, doing this, and then I'll lay down and I'm thinking about this, thinking different things. I'm thinking about new stuff we got in, new information we got in. Of course, thinking about my business too. We're still doing that. So my brain has been on overdrive. There was a long question or comment. I don't know. All right, folks, we're gonna close this down. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We will be back in the studio. It will be much better ran because I'll be less involved. Anytime I'm less involved in it, it runs better. So again, we really appreciate all the love and support. Go check out that Patreon account. If you guys want to see some stuff done, you have my word that we're going to do right, and not only with your trust on here, but you know, if you help support and fund this, we're going to do right. We're going to do right by you. I can't even talk now. All right, hey folks, we're going to call this a night. I am completely toasted. I'm done. Anyways, appreciate your love and support. Like, subscribe, all those things. We'll see you next Wednesday. I'm sure I'll probably get out another video or two between now and then. I definitely will be putting out a video very soon on some of the information regarding Max Urich. So stay tuned for that. But anyways, until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.